Aquarius, if you're listening to this right now, it's not by accident. There's a quiet part of you that's been strong for a very long time. Strong enough to walk alone. Strong enough to carry everything by yourself. But deep down, there's a feeling you don't say out loud that you were never meant to do life this way forever. This message isn't here to rush you. It's here to meet you, right where you are. If this resonates, leave a comment and simply write "I'm open." Because what's coming next isn't about fixing you, it's about a connection that's already moving toward you. And once you hear the next part, you'll understand why this moment was written in the stars. This isn't a random moment in your day. I know you don't fully believe in coincidence. You never really have. You've always felt things before you could explain them. A shift in the air. A quiet knowing in your chest. That sense of being slightly out of step with the world around you. Not because something was wrong with you, but because you were listening to a different rhythm. You see life from above sometimes. Patterns. Cycles, the long arc of meaning. While everyone else seems busy reacting, you've been observing, learning, holding yourself together in silence. And I know how often you've done that alone. There's a particular kind of solitude that follows you. Not the loud kind, not the dramatic kind, but the quiet one. The one where you can sit in a room full of people and still feel unseen. You learned early how to rely on yourself, how to be your own anchor, how to keep moving forward without asking for much. And somewhere along the way, being strong became normal. Being independent became expected, even by you. But let me ask you something, just gently. When was the last time you truly felt met? Not admired, not depended on, but met. There's a reason this message is reaching you now, not years ago, not later. Now, because you're standing at a quiet threshold. One that doesn't announce itself with chaos or urgency. It arrives softly, like light slipping through a crack in the dark. This isn't about changing who you are. It's about honoring how far you've come. You've done the inner work most people avoid. You've questioned your beliefs. You've sat with discomfort. You've chosen growth even when no one was watching. And that matters. More than you realize. There's a kind of connection that only finds people like you after they've learned how to stand on their own. Not because love is earned through struggle, but because clarity creates space. You're no longer looking to be rescued. You're not trying to be completed. You're simply open to walking beside someone without losing yourself. That's not weakness. That's evolution. If you feel a soft ache in your chest right now, that's not loneliness returning. That's awareness expanding. It's your heart remembering that it was always meant to be shared, not drained. Not overextended, but shared. You don't need to force anything. You don't need to chase signs. You don't need to rush the process. All you need is presence and permission. Permission to receive. Permission to soften. Permission to let something steady and real move toward you at its own pace. Stay with me here. Let the noise fade for a moment. There's more unfolding beneath the surface of this feeling. And as you keep listening, you may begin to recognize why this exact moment found you. You've never been afraid of solitude. That's something people often misunderstand about you. You learned early how to sit with yourself, how to make sense of your own thoughts, how to turn silence into something livable. While others were searching for distraction, you were building an inner world, a place where you could think freely, feel deeply, and recover quietly. You taught yourself how to heal without applause, how to keep going without reassurance, how to stand steady when no one was offering a hand. And over time, being alone stopped feeling like a lack. It became familiar. Almost comfortable. There's a strength in that. A real one. But there's also a cost that no one really talks about. Because when you become too good at carrying everything yourself, you forget what it feels like to set something down. You forget what it's like to let someone meet you halfway. To let support arrive without questioning it. You didn't push people away out of coldness. You stepped back out of instinct. Out of self-preservation. Out of the quiet belief that it was easier to rely on yourself than to explain who you really are. And I know you've told yourself that you don't need much. That independence suits you, that this is just how you're wired. But listen to this part closely. Being capable of standing alone does not mean you were meant to stand alone forever. There's a difference between strength and overextension. Between independence and isolation disguised as peace. You've completed that chapter, the one where you prove you can survive on your own. You don't need to keep tightening your grip just to show yourself you're strong. What you're being invited into now is something quieter. More subtle, more human. A phase where you don't have to perform resilience, where you don't have to anticipate disappointment, where you don't have to stay 3 steps ahead emotionally just to feel safe. It's okay to loosen the armor a little. Not all at once, just enough to breathe. Because the next kind of connection that finds you won't require you to shrink or harden or over-explain yourself. It won't ask you to abandon who you are. It will recognize you. And that's different. You're allowed to want companionship without it meaning you failed at independence. You're allowed to welcome closeness without losing your edge or your identity. You're not going backward. You're not becoming weaker. You're evolving. So if you feel a strange mix of relief and uncertainty right now, that makes sense. That's what it feels like when you no longer have to do everything alone, but you're still learning how to trust that truth. Stay here with me for a moment. Let the idea settle. There's something forming quietly in this space. And as you keep listening, you may notice that what once felt like distance is beginning to feel like an opening. There's something important I want you to hear right now, and it might feel subtle at first. What's moving toward you is not arriving because you are lonely. It's arriving because you are ready. For a long time, you've watched others rush into connections trying to escape themselves, trying to fill the silence, trying to prove something. That was never your way. You learned to pause, to step back, to ask the harder questions inside yourself. And somewhere along that path, you stopped looking for someone to complete you. You stopped needing validation to feel real. That's not distance, that's clarity. The connection that's forming around you now comes from that place, not from hunger, not from fear, but from alignment. It doesn't rush your nervous system. It doesn't make you second-guess your worth. It doesn't pull you into emotional noise or old patterns you've already outgrown. Instead, it feels steady, almost quiet, like a calm presence beside you rather than a force pulling at you. You might notice it shows up differently. In the way a conversation feels easier than expected. In how you don't feel the need to explain yourself as much. In the absence of that familiar tension you once thought was chemistry. This kind of connection doesn't ask you to abandon your independence. It respects it. It doesn't need you to perform, or impress, or overgive. It meets you where you already stand. And that can feel unfamiliar at first. Almost too simple. You might catch yourself wondering why there isn't more intensity. Why your heart isn't racing. Why there's no urgency. But peace doesn't announce itself loudly. It settles in quietly. It feels like exhaling after holding your breath for years. This is not about being swept away. It's about being grounded. About walking alongside someone without losing your sense of direction. And I know that part of you still checks the exits. Still scans for disappointment. Still keeps a small distance just in case. That makes sense. You've learned from experience. But notice this. You're not being asked to rush forward. You're simply being invited to stay present, to let connection grow naturally, without forcing meaning, without projecting the past. You're not filling a void. You're sharing space, and that changes everything. If you sit with this feeling for a moment, you may realize that what's been missing wasn't love. It was resonance. Someone who moves at your pace. Someone who values depth over drama. Someone who understands that real closeness doesn't take anything away from you. Just stay here. Let the idea breathe. There's a gentle awareness unfolding now. Not loud, not demanding. Just steady, like something quietly finding its place right beside you. There's a certain kind of presence that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't rush into your life. It doesn't demand attention. It moves slowly, almost quietly, like someone who knows they don't need to prove anything to be real. That's the energy finding its way toward you now. Not loud, not dramatic, not wrapped in urgency. You might not even notice it at first. Because it doesn't trigger your defenses. It doesn't wake up old alarms in your body. Instead, it feels steady, consistent, like something that shows up the same way tomorrow as it did today. And I know how rare that feels to you. You've spent years navigating connections that felt unpredictable. People who burned bright and disappeared. Promises that sounded good but couldn't hold weight. Moments that felt intense but never safe. So you adapted. You learned to stay alert, to expect inconsistency, to rely on yourself instead of hoping someone would stay. But this presence is different. It doesn't chase you. And it doesn't pull away either. It simply stays. When things get quiet, it doesn't vanish. When things get complicated, it doesn't retreat. When life feels heavy, it doesn't look for an exit. And that can feel unfamiliar to your nervous system, almost suspicious. You might catch yourself waiting for the shift, for the moment where things change, for the other shoe to drop. But it doesn't. Because this energy isn't built on performance or excitement. It's built on reliability, on intent. On a calm understanding that connection doesn't need chaos to be meaningful. For someone like you, that matters more than you've admitted. You don't need someone to fix you. You don't need someone to reshape you. You've already done enough transforming on your own. What you need is space. Room to breathe. Room to think. Room to be exactly who you are without explanation. And this presence offers that. It doesn't ask you to soften your intelligence. It doesn't ask you to dim your independence. It doesn't mistake your depth for distance. It sees you. Not just the version of you that functions well in the world, but the quiet parts too, the thoughtful pauses, The moments where you withdraw to recharge. There's safety in being met without pressure. You don't feel rushed here. You don't feel evaluated. You don't feel like you have to stay one step ahead emotionally. You're allowed to move at your own pace, to open slowly, to trust in layers, and that kind of steadiness does something important. It lets your body relax. It lets your mind stop stand-up scanning for threats. It reminds your heart that connection can feel calm, not boring, not dull, just grounded. You don't lose yourself here. You remain intact. And as this feeling settles in, you may notice a subtle shift inside, a loosening, a quiet sense that you don't have to brace anymore. Just stay with that sensation for a moment. Let it anchor. Because what's forming now isn't trying to rush the future. It's simply arriving in the present. And there's something meaningful beginning to take shape in the stillness of that realization. There's a reason you learned how to build walls. And it wasn't because you were distant, or cold, or incapable of love. You built them because at some point, your heart gave more than it could safely hold. You showed up fully, you listened deeply, you carried emotions that weren't always yours to carry. And when things fell apart, you were the one left making sense of the silence. You were misunderstood more than once. Not because you weren't clear, but because your depth didn't fit into simple expectations. And somewhere along the way, you realized that being open came with a cost. So you adapted. You became selective. You became guarded. You learned how to keep parts of yourself tucked away where no one could mishandle them. Your body learned before your mind did. Tension in the shoulders, a shallow breath, a pause before trusting. That wasn't weakness, that was intelligence. You were strong earlier than you should have been. Independent before it was fair, self-sufficient before you were ever held the way you needed. So of course you learned to protect yourself. But here's what's gently changing now. Those walls did their job. They kept you standing when you needed stability. They gave you space to heal without interference. They allowed you to survive chapters that demanded resilience. But walls are meant to be temporary, not permanent residences. And lately, you might feel a strange tension inside, a pull between safety and openness, between staying guarded and wanting something more real. That's not confusion. That's growth. Your heart isn't asking you to tear everything down. It's asking you to notice where protection has turned into isolation, where caution has quietly blocked connection. And that realization can feel tender, because opening again doesn't mean forgetting what hurt you. It means recognizing that not every presence carries the same intention. Not every hand reaches to take. Not every closeness leads to loss. Not every connection arrives with harm attached. Some come with patience, with respect, with a willingness to move at your pace. And I know part of you still flinches at that idea, still wonders if staying open is worth the risk. That's okay. You don't need to rush yourself into trust. Just allow the possibility that your past experiences do not define every future encounter. You're not being asked to abandon discernment. You're being invited to soften your grip just enough to let something genuine reach you. There's strength in discernment. And there's courage in allowing yourself to be seen again. You haven't closed your heart. You've been protecting something precious. And now, that part of you is sensing that it might be safe to breathe a little deeper. Stay with that feeling. Don't analyze it. Just notice it. Because as awareness settles in, you may begin to feel that protection no longer needs to stand guard the way it once did. And something gentle is beginning to move through the space you've kept so carefully held. There's something deeply familiar about the way you love. You give without keeping score. You notice what others miss. You listen not just to words, but to pauses, to shifts in tone, to what someone is carrying beneath the surface. And for a long time, that depth has flowed mostly in one direction. You've been the steady one, the understanding one, the one who holds space even when no one is holding you. You didn't do it for recognition. You did it because it felt natural. Because empathy lives close to your core. Because you know what it's like to feel unseen. But somewhere along the way, you began to normalize imbalance. You told yourself it was fine to give more. That this was just how relationships worked. That needing less meant being stronger. And yet, there were moments when something inside you grew quiet. Moments when you wondered what it would feel like to be met with the same care you offer. This is where things begin to shift. The connection moving toward you now doesn't drain you. It doesn't lean on your understanding without offering its own. It carries a different energy, one that feels even grounded. Mutual. You don't have to explain your worth here. You don't have to earn attention. You don't have to overextend just to feel close. You're listened to. Fully, not interrupted, not rushed, not quietly dismissed. And that does something powerful. It reminds you that being valued is not something you have to negotiate for. There's respect in the way this presence meets you. Respect for your time, your boundaries, your need for space and thought. You're not asked to shrink your complexity. You're not asked to simplify your truth. You're allowed to arrive exactly as you are, and maybe the most unfamiliar part of all is how little effort it takes. No strategizing, no guessing, no emotional labor to keep things steady, just a natural exchange. Give, receive, and give again. That balance isn't boring, it's nourishing. It allows your nervous system to rest. It allows your heart to open without fear of being taken for granted. And I know a part of you hesitates here, because allowing yourself to receive can feel more vulnerable than giving ever did. But receiving doesn't make you dependent. It makes you human. You don't lose your independence by letting someone show up for you. You deepen it. Because now, you're choosing connection, not using it as a substitute for strength. You don't need to work harder to be loved. You don't need to prove your value through sacrifice. All that's being asked of you now is permission. Permission to let care move both ways. Permission to trust that reciprocity exists. Permission to believe that you don't have to carry everything alone. Take a breath here. Let that truth land gently. Because something meaningful happens when giving and receiving finally find the same rhythm. And as you stay with this feeling, you may notice that your heart already knows how to recognize what feels fair. There's something I want to name softly, because you've felt it before. That sense of waiting without knowing what you were waiting for. You watched time move forward. You watched people come and go. You watched chapters close before you felt ready to open another. And more than once, you wondered if you had missed something. If you waited too long. If the timing simply passed you by. I know that thought has crossed your mind. Usually late at night, when the world is quiet enough for honesty to surface. But hear this. Nothing about your life has been late. Nothing about your path has been off schedule. What felt like delay was actually preparation. You needed time to grow into yourself. To shed versions of you that were shaped by survival. To learn how to be alone without hardening. And the other presence in this story needed that time too. Even if you have never met. Even if you do not yet know their name. Both of you were healing things that could not be rushed. Patterns that required patience. Lessons that only time could teach. If you had crossed paths earlier, you might not have recognized each other. Or worse, you might have repeated old cycles before either of you knew how to stop them. So life slowed things down, quietly, intentionally, not to punish you, but to protect what was forming. You've changed more than you realize. Your boundaries are clearer now. Your intuition is sharper. Your heart knows the difference between excitement and alignment. That didn't happen by accident. And the same is true on the other side of this story. Growth happened there too. Reflection, releasing. Learning how to stay. So when you think about waiting, try not to frame it as absence. Think of it as calibration. Two frequencies adjusting. Two lives finding stability. So when they finally come into range, the connection doesn't collapse under its own weight. It holds. There's something comforting about that, even if it challenges the impatience inside you. Because it means you were never forgotten, never overlooked, never skipped. You were being prepared for something that could actually last. And now, something inside you already senses the shift. A subtle readiness. A calm curiosity instead of longing. That's how you know the moment is close. Not because of urgency, but because of ease. You're not reaching anymore. You're available. And availability is different. It's grounded. It's steady. It trusts that what aligns does not need to be chased. So if there's a quiet feeling in your chest right now, a sense of things settling into place, let it be there. That feeling isn't about the future. It's about arrival. Stay with it. There's a gentle unfolding happening. And it's carrying you exactly where you're meant to be. Some connections don't arrive with fireworks. They don't announce themselves loudly. They don't demand that you pay attention. They arrive softly, almost unnoticed at first. Like a familiar feeling you can't quite name. This one doesn't come with confusion. It doesn't pull you into overthinking. It doesn't keep you awake replaying conversations in your head. Instead, it feels light. Not shallow, just unburdened. There is a calm that settles in your body when you're near it. Your breathing slows without effort. Your shoulders drop. Your mind stops scanning for what might go wrong. That's how you recognize it. You're not on edge here. You're not bracing for impact. You're not trying to interpret silence or decode mixed signals. There is clarity. And clarity feels peaceful. This presence doesn't make you anxious about the future. It doesn't make you question your worth. It doesn't trigger the part of you that learned to stay alert. Instead, it offers something unfamiliar and deeply grounding. A sense of being settled. Of being understood without explanation. It feels like coming home after a long journey. Not to a place, but to yourself. For someone like you, that matters more than passion alone. You've experienced intensity before. You know how loud attraction can be. But this is different. This is a connection that doesn't distract you from your life. It integrates into it. It respects your independence while standing close. It walks beside you without trying to lead or follow. There is space here. healthy space, the kind that allows two whole people to exist without losing themselves. And you'll notice something important. You don't feel the need to rush. There's no pressure to define everything immediately. No fear that if you move too slowly, it will disappear. Because what's aligned doesn't threaten to leave. It stays. You're not chasing signs anymore. You're not asking the universe for reassurance. You're simply present. And presence is where this kind of connection lives. This isn't just about romance. It's about companionship that understands your rhythm, your need for depth, your need for meaning. It's about being seen not only for what you give to the world, but for who you are when you're quiet. You were never meant to walk this path alone forever. You were meant to walk it consciously, with awareness, with choice. And now that choice feels available, not forced, not dramatic, just real. If you let yourself sit with this feeling, you may realize something gentle and profound. You're not waiting anymore. You're already connected to the knowing that you're allowed to receive. And as that understanding settles in, there's a soft certainty that begins to form. Not loud, not urgent, just steady. Stay here with that sense of arrival. Let it anchor you. Because something meaningful is already moving with you now, and it knows exactly how to keep pace with your heart. Before you go, I want you to notice something. You made it all the way here. Not because you were searching for answers, but because something inside you already knew. You didn't listen to this by accident, and you didn't stay because of curiosity alone. You stayed because a part of you recognized itself in these words. That part of you has been patient, has been steady, has been waiting without forcing, and tonight it didn't need to be convinced, it just needed to be acknowledged. Here's the quiet truth. You were never behind. You were never forgotten. You were never meant to rush your way into belonging. You were meant to arrive exactly like this. Aware, grounded, open. If something softened in your chest while listening, that's not emotion passing through. That's recognition settling in. It's the moment you stop asking when things will change and start trusting that they already are. So if this message touched you, leave a comment below and simply write, "I trust myself." Not for me. For you, so your own voice can hear it echoed back. And if this space feels safe to you, if it feels familiar, if it feels like home in a way you didn't expect, stay connected. Subscribe, not because you need more guidance, but because this journey is easier when we don't walk it in silence. There is more coming. Not louder, not dramatic, just clearer, deeper, and timed perfectly for where you are becoming. Until then, take this with you. You are not alone. You were never meant to be. And whatever is unfolding next already knows how to find you. Stay open, stay steady, and trust the pace of your own becoming. I'll meet you again when the next message arrives.